Welcome back to Etheria Restart. Today we're here to talk about Holden, if we should be building him out as a damage dealer or as support. And to have this conversation, of course, I have my resident expert on the channel, Hermes. Before we go any further, though, I want to remind you guys, if you've never played Etheria Restart, check out the game today by scanning this QR code or using my link in the description, which gets you 10 free summons inside of the game with hopes that you can pull in an SSR. Hermes, I'm looking forward to talking about Holden because there's not many animus that we speak of on the channel that have two different routes that you can go for building them out. So I want to kind of discuss that with Holden today and show him a little bit in some Terra Matan as well.
Yeah, Holden is actually a really fun animus to play around with. He's got like you're saying, he's got really a lot of different places you can use him in, and that makes it really fun with an animus.
Mhm.
But then also it's complicated, right? Because in other games you can have multiple copies of the same character, but obviously in Etheria and I'm sure a lot of these other similar gotchas, you really can't.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of strategize where you're going to use him and what gear you're going to put on him, and that's obviously a challenge in of itself for everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, we do have him built out on this account as a damage dealer and or support. And I want to kind of go through his kit, talk about how we built him out, and also really what skills shine and where things should be used for him. So why don't you get us started out and let me know where you want to go?
I feel like, obviously a kit is always so important with Animus. And I think this is like for people that are watching this, anytime you're looking at an Animus, always look at their kit first. You got to figure out what exactly they're doing
Hmm.
before you think about even building them out, putting a shell on, anything like that, or even where you're going to use them. Because if you don't know where they're good at, if you start throwing them into battles, you have no idea what's going on. That's what's going to happen. So I think we start with this A1 is really going to be valuable to start with.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it says that he delivers punishment, dealing 3 hits of damage equal to 90% of his defense to a single enemy, with each hit having a 15% chance to inflict a one-turn defense down. Do you like this A1, or is this one of the ones that you don't really primarily focus on?
So I think this A1 is really good, and the second part of the skill is also makes it a little adds an extra level of value to it, and
Hmm.
that second part is called execution mode. And so for every 500 defense he has, basically it increases his counterattack chance by 7%, and his final damage, like of whatever how much damage he's doing, increases that by 3.5%. And then when you book up this A1, that ability to counterattack is increased from 7 up to 10%, and that final damage is increased up to 5%. But what makes that so good is what it basically means is that if you have 5,000 defense on this Animus, you are going to then just counterattack every time you get hit because you have a 100% counterattack chance. And that is really valuable with this A1 because it has that defense break on it.
Hmm.
So if you're building him as a support or a damage dealer, even if you build him as a damage dealer and he doesn't have a whole lot of effect accuracy, you still have so many chances with all the counterattacks you're doing that it can be a very valuable skill to use. And then obviously if you're support but you're still able to get that 5,000 defense, you're just going to be dropping defense breaks all over the place. And that is like the number one damage amplifying debuff. And so that can really help boost the damage of your other animus or even his own damage because of his ability to put it on this A1 that counterattacks so much with.
So the way that you're talking about that, it makes it sound like an A1 would be a priority for leveling up, but how do you feel about that?
I think that it is a valuable one to skill up. I think again, this is the problem with this is I don't want to say, oh, you need to max out every single one of his animus skills. Obviously, everyone is going to get better when you
Hmm.
have all of their skills maxed. But the thing with Holden is that as we get into the rest of his kit, is that honestly, like his A1, it's a great valuable move. But his A2 and his A3, in my opinion at least, are more deserving of at least some of your lattice before you start investing into this A1. And when you think about it, 7 to 10% to counterattack chance, like it's still a pretty decent amount per every 500 defense. And so overall, you're going to still get a lot of value out of the skill. Also, because 5,000 defense is not a very, like, it's still a pretty high number. So even if you don't have 100%, you're still getting a lot of chance to counterattack and put that up without having to necessarily level up this skill.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So with that said, let's dive into the A2 strike through.
So this A2 honestly is it was super interesting, especially when it came out. I know we did a video on this as well with Hoyen because she was such a arena like threat, people were thinking,
Hmm.
and that his ability is so counter to her. It was kind of fun they released them at the same time. But what this does is this goes through, I mean, it has a big multiplier with that 400 bumping up when you skill it up all the way up to 480% of his defense, and it has a what is that? A 100, actually 100% chance. Again, when you book it up, starting out at a
Yeah.
60% to decrease the one enemy's turn meter, sadly, by 100%, and to fully max out their skill cooldowns. That in and of itself is just a huge ability with so much potential. I mean, you're going into a battle and you're going, all right, let's say you have an arena fight. Oh, here's their top damage dealer. Oh, your turn meter's back down to 0%. And on top of that, you can't use any of your skills for 2 to 3 turns. Like that's huge. That is a huge ability.
Yeah, you basically take their damage out of the fight base in arena.
Yeah, and that can really turn the tide. Just
Hmm.
having this one ability is so powerful in a fight. Obviously, if it was an AOE ability, I think that would be starting to get on the lines, and especially where the game is right now, of like people would be like, man, this is like a super, super overpowered move.
Hmm.
But that's why it has to be a single target. And even then, it still is a very powerful move to use when you get him fast enough and with enough effect accuracy to actually take care of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's dive into the A3, which is, I believe, your favorite.
Oh yeah, this A3, and honestly, again, look, when you're building this guy out, all of his abilities are good. They're worth the lattice investment. But this A3 really is a valuable move because of his. If you're going to be, especially if you're using him as a PVE unit and more of a support unit, with obviously some damage abilities, but mostly for that PVE support. And the
Hmm.
reason why this is so valuable is when you look at it. He does 2 hits of damage to all enemies. That's important. It's an AoE. Each one has a chance to dispel one buff, as well as inflicting attack down and resistance down on all enemies. Why that's so important is when you get up into those inferno modes of, especially, and again, we're talking about Terramatan.
Hmm.
Inferno Terramatan puts out automatically at the beginning of a battle, has immunity for 3 turns. Even you have like Aurora has immunity for 3 turns and stuff like that. So you can strip that off, then put out the attack down to make it so that that enemy, or again, Aurora, Termaton, whatever, is weaker on their attacks, and also is then getting resistance down, meaning that all of your other enemies that have abilities that need accuracy either don't need as much or just get overall a boost to their chance to actually land those debuffs, which is important again in Terramatan because of dot teams and getting the damage over time set up properly. It makes those teams a little bit easier to make and a little alleviates some of the pressure you need for those requirements.
Okay, so this makes a lot of sense, which brings us to the next step, which is the modules and how we actually have them built out and how you recommended I build him out on my account. What are some things that you really want to focus on when you're looking for the actual gear?
There's really 2 ways to build out this guy. I mean, we've been saying this whole time. You really have that damage dealing build, or you can go in and get a support build. And for you, I have recommended that you go with a support build. Get a little bit of damage in there when you can. Problem is, there's no real crit rate on the build, and so
Hmm.
that's not really going to be a very effective animus as far as damage dealing potential goes, just because again, such low crit rate. But the big things you need on him when you're doing a support build is speed, defense, and accuracy. Those are really the 3 big stats. I mean, obviously, like you don't, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that, but
Hmm.
those are really valuable stats to have. A lot of effect accuracy, especially when he isn't fully maxed out, because his chances can be a little low to land all his debuffs. And you want to make sure that you really are landing those, pushing turn meter back, and getting those cooldowns increased just because of how much viability those really have across the game.
Well said, man. Well said. What should we dive into into next? Do you want to go into the shell or probably into our shell? Correct.
I mean, yeah, I mean, let's go talk about that shell a little bit because we're on that support mindset of PvE.
Hmm.
This artisan is honestly such an incredible one to use with him. Artisan is good in general. I would say, if you're struggling with getting into these upper level um module areas, go farm some Hell or Inferno Nikonana and get yourself a couple really solid artisans and use them in battle because what they do is they put out a shield equal to 400% of the owner animus's defense, and put that on that animus as well as the animus with the lowest HP. And that is really, oh, and it also increases defense. That's even crazier. So what this really is doing is it's putting on, when you put it on a champion or an animus like Holden, what this is doing is you are saying, I've got this defense-based damage dealer or this defense-based support unit that I've just stacked a ton of defense on. And then on top of all that, I am then going to add a giant shield based on that defense onto onto Holden, as well as the Animus that needs it the most. And that really helps with survivability, tanking hits, all that kind of stuff that you really want to do and should be able to do as you get into this upper content.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a shell that's legit and can be used in many different animus. To be honest with you, during the game, we actually are running him right now in a Terramaton battle. Let's see what's going on right here. You can kind of walk us through what you're seeing. You want me to go on one times, or actually we're good right here?
Yeah. So the big thing, and obviously, those debuffs all just fell off, but he did just have up that resistance down and attack down out on that Terramaton, which is really, really important. He hits so incredibly hard. Actually, him and the left side ad,
Hmm.
they both hit so hard that you really do need, especially at the beginning of that battle, you really want to get some of that that decrease attack. And then obviously the decrease resistance also helps land all the other debuffs you need. And so just in general, he's very much suited for this fight, able to push back turn meter, make sure that your animus get more turns. Just makes this a much easier fight overall.
All right, so it makes Terramatan an easier fight, but what are the areas where you would say Holden is the most usable throughout the game, Terramatan included?
这就送他们上路。
Honestly, I do think it is Terramatan. It really comes down to, again, where you are investing your time and your resources. Again, if you are really like looking to farm up a lot of Terramatan, this guy is really going to be very much your friend.
Hmm.
If you look at a lot of recent clears, like obviously when you go on the main screen of a certain module or shell drop boss, you can look at a lot of the recent clears or fastest clears, and he's in a lot of those teams simply because of the abilities that he does bring to the game. And that is so, well, in those game modes, I should say. And that is really valuable and gives you a lot of viability as you go through and trying to clear out that boss, get to higher tiers, get better gear, everything else like that.
Thanks so much, man, for coming through and breaking it down. It seems like he's your guy for Terramatan, and I like that you were kind of sharing with us today multiple different ways of utilizing him. So thanks for coming on through. I want to remind everyone before we go that the video was sponsored by Etheria Restart, and that you guys can join today with the QR code or the link in the description. Get yourself 10 additional summons absolutely for free. We'll be back with more guides on different animus in an upcoming video. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.